Good morning, y'all. All right. Keith, I think you are a first timer
I am. Good morning.
on this.
I am taking over for Isaac Lopez. Yes.
Yes, I think we put out the call for volunteers for this project on Isaac's first meeting to the outreach committee, and he volunteered, and so you didn't even get an outreach meeting before you got thrown into a task force. So you're a brave man.
I'm at that point in my career where I owe it to the community to do this.
Good morning, Jamie.
Good morning, everybody.
Hi, Julia.
And
All right. Ab wrote and said he had something going on and may not make it. He was hoping to jump in maybe in the second half, but he might be a little short today. Okay, let's talk about objectives. I am glad to see that either overnight or early this morning, a lot of people dove in and did some work on the just the document to try and think through what this is all about. Thank you for doing that. Um, all right, so here is the thesis statement right behind this is that what we are currently doing in outreach is, I don't want to say ineffective, but it is certainly not as effective as it could be or as it should be considering the level of investment and funding that we've got. This is probably the peak year for outreach funding. I don't think our subsequent years are going to be as rich. And so trying to maintain the current outreach strategy, which is very event centric, is probably more expensive than we can sustain. And I would also argue that just the budget efficiency of what we're doing now is pretty low. You look at the return on our investment, I don't think it's great. Others might debate that, but I don't know. I feel pretty confident in this position. So the reason that I wanted to have get folks together and talk about this is, are we being as effective as or how could we be more effective? How could we rejigger our strategy and our tactical portfolio to make the money work better for us and to better achieve our objectives? Now that you know rolls you into some questions like, what are your objectives? Why does this organization exist at all, and what's its purpose? And so those were some of the things that I was poking at in the document, which is, why do we think this organization exists? And given that mission, how do we best achieve it with the greatest amount of budget efficiency? That's the kind of the setup. We might want to do uh, just a quick intro of everybody. I realize that several of us are familiar from the outreach committee, but we just maybe want to do a quick thing because Keith is new on this stage. So Keith, I am Mike Farron Jones. I am the vice chair of the outreach committee. It's kind of stepping in as chair while Rachel Wan from IBM is out on the summer. Right, she's doing a coverage on another project, and I'm doing the chair role while she's out. Day job is at Intel. Been doing confidential computing for about 4 years now. Um, and I have this annoying habit of asking questions like, why are we here? So here we go. Julia, why don't you go ahead?
Sure, yeah. I'm Yulia from Super Protocol. I am CEO and co-founder, but before joining Super, I was with Intel for 18 years, and the last, I don't know, 10 years of that actually were devoted to distributed secure computing in some way or the other. And yeah, so I was kind of a lot of time spending with confidential computing orientation things, I would say this way. And at Super, what is Super is like confidential AI cloud and marketplace. Think of us as some kind of fully decentralized AWS, but fully confidential. And on top, like Hugging Face, but with the capability to monetize AI models and data because we are fully functioning in confidential mode. And all of this, of course, allows to run any collaboration perspective also in confidential mode. So this is what we are.
All right. Keith, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, thank you guys very much. Keith Cunningham, currently leading strategy and business development at a small open source company. Been in and around these roles since 2017. I came from an enterprise background of about 15 years at EMC, from owning field sales to product management, business development at EMC, and have taken these roles to kind of I guess where bridge engineering innovation with go-to-market execution is probably the best description of what I've been doing. Currently working in and around secure container technologies and confidential computing solutions, helping to build a business around it. And my interest here is in helping to develop the community and understand the community, particularly as we're developing products around the community. So thanks for allowing me to join. I look forward to really getting up and running quickly and seeing how I can help here.
Okay. And Jamie, so far I see the connective tissue across the three so far. Let's see if you can
Can I pull it
we
together?
see, can you pull it all together?
Get your stuff together,
Have we all
Jamie.
shared a CEO at one point? Because I can see all of us, me, Yulia, and Keith have all shared a CEO at one point.
Oh, yeah. I don't do great at having bosses, so that's actually the place where
Oh.
it's like three of these things belong together.
All right.
So my name is Jamie. My background is as an entrepreneur, a startup founder, and I've joined a startup called Invari, which is a member of CCC. That's who I'm representing here. Invari secures the kernel at runtime. So it's remote attestation and is bringing some exclusively licensed NSA technology to market. I am on the go-to-market and product strategy side of the house. So like Keith, my eye is to innovation and how we get that how we get that into people's hands. So we are delivering real value into the world. And my experience in this space is very light, is very new, right? So when I say things, right, about the mission of this organization, it is from the perspective of someone who's very new to the space. And maybe that's useful in some instances, right? To sort of feel how it is for someone who doesn't have the depth of experience, right? To be like, but why is this? And I'm hoping that it's useful. And when it's not, please feel free to say, we're going to take this piece and we're going to leave the rest because we have this other context. So fully open to that kind of engagement and being the new guy.
All right. Excellent. Yes. Well, let's see. What's your connection to Pat Gelsinger? Do you have one?
No.
Oh, man. All right.
Pat used to be my boss at
Yeah.
EMC. He came in and he was responsible for the cloud infrastructure group at EMC. I think prior to him going into VMware, because EMC owned VMware at the time.
Yeah. He's been my boss twice. So first, when I was a little Intel puppy, and then he left and went to become the CEO of EMC and then ultimately EMC VMware. And then he came back to Intel. So round 2. Okay. There's so much to say on that topic. Let's just let it go. All right. So thank you guys for diving in on the strategy doc. Let me go bring that up real fast.
Mike, I requested access to that. I wasn't getting it through the access that Isaac had previously had, so.
Oh, okay. Let's see here. Let me blow this up a little bigger.
Mike, I actually really enjoyed your questions because even though I started to like copy pasting some answers today, but it really gave some food of thought, and some things I just realized only yesterday. And I think that some CCC team is not even realizing it, right? So definitely very good that you managed to share it beforehand. And so, yes, it gave time to just think over.
And this is going to be, whatever conclusions that we reach are going to be, presented to the outreach committee. They'll be presented to the governing board and the TAC and everything else. But it's going to be the people who actively put their hands on this that shape it. I think the nature of a lot of these, my observation of hanging around the CCC for the last 3 years has been there are a handful of people who put energy into it that make it work. And that represents maybe, 5, 6, single digit percentage of the actual membership. The rest of them are passengers on the bus. They are there because they think they need to be there, or they got told by their boss to monitor it. So this is one of those things where, if you sometimes feel like, I struggle for influence, this is not, if you're active in this effort, this is, we'll basically determine what the strategy is going to be. So it's going to be I think asking these questions and doing a good job in digging down to the core and then building a strategy on top of those conclusions is going to be really important. So I thought my brain is trying to, herd and organize. Oh, hey, Ab made it. All right, great.
Yeah.
I've been trying to herd just everybody. Ab, real quick, you just missed intros. Why don't you just do a quick 30 seconds and then we'll dive back in.
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Ab Nassef. I'm Director of Product Management at AMD, focusing on product security, including computational computing.
All right. Okay. So what I thought we would do primarily today, I know where I want to go. Where I want to go at the end of ideally 2 meetings is I want to be able to have us write down, this is what we believe is our mission. These are our metrics. These are our audiences. These are our priorities, and be able to take that to the governing board and the TAC and be able to say, this is what the outreach committee is going to dedicate itself to doing. And this is how we are going to spend our money in service of these goals. And we're going to use this strategy to achieve those goals. That's what I want to get to. Now, I think this meeting is primarily going to be exploration. So what do we all think is the point of it all? What is it that defines success for outreach in the Confidential Computing Consortium? So my little program manager brain is trying to herd everybody to a particular goal, but I got to resist that. And I think just let it kind of, let the exploration happen here for the first part of the discussion. So I thought maybe what we can just do is, do the book club kind of thing here of just, here's the question. And, was heartened to see folks, put some time into thinking about the answers. But let's just talk about it for a second. What's the mission of the outreach committee? What's the purpose? And Jamie, since you are first up here on the list, why don't you talk a little bit about your view?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, being new, right? I have what I have from the charter, and I appreciate you sharing sort of that. But I'm also interested, Mike, in adding to your question, like in really focusing on what's the outreach committee's goal, right? Not just the CCC. So if I map awareness, usage, and innovation as goals of the CCC, then I am thinking that usage and awareness is the piece of that that goes to outreach. So that's what I was trying to say from this this blurb here. But I'm open to the idea that, like, continuing the innovation, the technical conversations in public is also part of the outreach committee. I just kind of feel like some of that work rolls up into or secondary to like new eyeballs on this as the way to solve problems that people are expressing. Like you said, I think in the last conference call, right? Some people are trying to solve a problem and they don't even know to say the words confidential computing. And how can we connect those dots? That feels like incredible value add for the outreach committee to the CCC as well.
Let me ask you a question that's related to that. What if they never even had to know they had to ask the question about confidential computing?
Yeah.
Whether they would rather, because I think it's extremely unusual that some would say, I have a problem with confidential computing.
Right.
They're going to say, I have a problem with compliance under these conditions. I have a problem with, whatever, some specific use case. And if they were brought a solution that used, a tested, trusted execution environments, and they never even knew it, is the confidential computing consortium still being successful?
Oh, I don't know the answer to that. I think it's incredible, but I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know the answer either, but it's I mean,
Yeah.
From a sales perspective, that'd be fine. But from the perspective of this organization, I don't know.
Yeah, curious other people's thoughts.
All right.
Yeah. So
If go ahead, I'm sorry.
no, I was just about to gonna jump on that point specifically. So I think one of the challenges we have is just purely from a positioning perspective, and we are promoting, and I'm not saying we should change that. I'm just saying, like, trying to kind of evaluate or assess the situation right in here. So just in the name, right? We are a confidential computing consortium, right? Which is fine. Like, we do that. Like, there are different industry technologies, or consortiums, or industry bodies, et cetera, et cetera. So if you compare, for example, to privacy enhancing technologies, just like the PETs, for example, are actually right there. They're talking about the benefit, not the it's the what, not the how. You see what I mean? That now the challenge we have is basically how to say, okay, this is a great technology, confidential computing. I think one of the things and it's natural just by nature, I think, of the maturity of the technology, the adoption, and so on, is that it's within our, like, whether it's the members, people who are working on this, cloud vendors, hardware vendors, ecosystem software, all the ecosystem we have today who have already adopted. What I think we have, it's almost like a glass ceiling that we are fighting, or we have to break to go beyond just that. That's my opinion. That's the biggest challenge that we are facing. We started it with the whole, for example, the brand repositioning, talking about benefits and use cases. That's great, but we didn't necessarily, for example, push hard enough, I think, from a communication perspective to talk about it and amplify that message and find more like the white paper that every time I get internally, just maybe it's anecdotal, I always get like this question. Oh, can you tell me where's can you send me the white paper that CCC has done like with all the use like specific use cases and how to companies have used like real world examples, right? I think that part of breaking out, well, for two things, how to while we keep talking to the uh, technical audience about the technology, which is critical, obviously for the adoption and development, innovation, and so on. But also the adoption part, I think it's outside of that audience, so much more, whether it's CTOs, so whatever that decision-making chain, as I mentioned in the last outreach committee, I think we need to identify that. I know this is going out from the goal, but just kind of wanted to jump on that comment about what we are facing as challenges, I guess. Guys, don't hesitate to stop me because I tend to sometimes just talk a lot. So
It's okay.
I'm really sorry. As I said earlier in the week, I couldn't make earlier than this. Can someone just maybe give me a brief outline of where we've got to and any previous conversation?
We're just,
if you don't mind.
I mean, Mike, I just told, I just explained to everybody that this first meeting is likely to be pretty loose. Just kind of discussing our views of what is the purpose of it all, right? And what things define success. And so we're kind of exploring, folks' answers to this first question, which is what's the mission of the outreach committee and why does it exist at all?
Mike, may I jump in answering
Sure.
your question? So, at what level will any adopted CC case be considered relevant and applicable to be part of CCC influence or not to some extent? And this was actually what when you send these kind of CCC mission documents, I was really literally stuck with the question of this organization is focused on open source projects, right? And at the same time, it's to some extent is limited to those open source projects, and how to overcome this, because a lot of CC accelerations and adoptions would be, of course, outside of open source projects specifically supported by CCC. And the only question that I've got for myself, how to answer your like affiliated question and this kind of how to overcome this ceiling, at least for me, is that CCC needs to understand when it actually indirectly influences something, because it's not always like straightforward. And I would say that I would assume that nobody here knows that Super Protocol initially started using Gramine. And at that point, when Super was founded and started using Gramine, it was already
Grameen.
Yes, thank you. It was already the CCC member open source project. And even though later on we worked with the team, right? I know it was also Intel supported in a lot of cases, but still it was officially, right, with the maintainers outside of Intel, etc., right? So this was the project. We used it. We further on evolved to other technologies, contributed a lot of, and further will contribute to a lot of open source on our side. And now we've got our own solution, right? It's not Gramine based anymore, but in the very beginning it was, right? And this is, I don't know how Super would have evolved, right, in the very beginning, but that was what we were, right? And this is where what CCC was actually funding, supporting, right, in the very beginning. So now there's a lot of open source projects that are being supported by CCC. I don't know how aware we are what's happening with all the communities that may leverage partially, not always for everything, but at least partially these kind of technologies, right? But this is something that actually indirectly influence. So when Super developed its project and then went to CCC to publish the case study, we were rejected, saying that Super Protocol is not CCC hosted or enabled, etc. use case, right? That's why we're not going to share it publicly. So I would say that there is such a huge, a lot like things that we may not know what's happening with what CCC may actually indirectly influence from acceleration and adoption of CC, not on the end user perspective, but before end use come, you need to develop the not just low level solution, you need to develop everything, the full stack, right? And on each specific layer, CCC members, CCC open source projects, or somebody nearby just like looking how it all works may influence everything. And this is all maybe fully considered to be as indirect influence and in this sense, acceleration of CC adoption. And if we look at this, then a lot of things for me, whether it's commercial at the end, but we're going to be open source, but we're not yet, right? If it's commercial, if it's not commercial, it does not really matter. If it's direct influence or not, it does not really matter. If we manage to embrace these kind of possibilities, track them and like open them for everyone, this will really help to understand how close we are actually to the in the wording of what CC mission is all about and outreach, and how and close this just kind of back of understanding what we are, right? So the wording is right, it's the way how we perceive it that needs to be a bit, to me, adjusted to unleash what we can do together.
Yeah, and that kind of goes down to this other question, which is balancing the community interests with commercial interests. And I think is that inherently a conflict, or are they actually the same thing? And
can I sorry,
but I think that's the one of the things that I think is kind of an important foundational point that we need to consider is that the organization is hosted under the Linux Foundation, and the Linux Foundation, I don't know if they have any rules around this, but I haven't seen any bylaws that prohibit this. Just one second, Mike. And but it's different than a lot of other things that are hosted under the Linux Foundation. You think about these projects that are specifically formed around a piece of software or a particular project is how those communities form. And those communities form explicitly to evolve and proliferate that piece of software. The CCC is really a community of interest it's not one project, or one piece of software. It's a community of interest of people who are interested in a category. And so it's a little different than a typical Linux Foundation hosted thing. So
I'm gonna bring you up there because there's a word you've used a couple of times, and I think we need to be careful about it, which is hosted. The CCC is a managed fund, a directed fund, which is a part of the Linux Foundation. It's not hosted. And we need to kind of be aware of that, which means that we are entirely under the control of the Linux Foundation. And as you say, we're very different to lots of other communities and other directed funds underneath the Linux Foundation. And that has led us to start doing some things which are atypical. And I think one of the things, and this is something I tried to encourage, and I think maybe I've over-encouraged, is trying to give people an opportunity to showcase the things they've done around confidential computing. And that is causing some concerns within within the Linux Foundation generally. It comes back slightly to the point you're making, Yulia, about open source, because it's really weird. Generally, the most communities in the LF are about open source and only about open source. And as Mike FJ said, around specific open source projects or software pieces. And we're not. We've always said we're about promoting confidential computing generally, but we want to make as much of that open source as possible. So there is an immediate tension there right from the start, I think, which bubbles up from time to time, and this is bubbling up now, which is fine. And this, we're doing the right thing, which is talking about it. But we need to be aware that we are absolutely a part of. We're not hosted by. We are part of the Linux Foundation, and that puts some constraints on us. So that was all I was going to say for now.
What?
Yeah.
Sorry, what type of constraints are we talking about there? Just for my own, like, interest, like knowledge and.
So there's only certain things that we could use funds for instance, and the LF needs to approve all budgets. The LF needs to approve all changes to our governance, legal things like that. Yeah, so we submit budgets that we have agreed to the LF, and the LF can, can decide not to accept that. I suspect it's not happened for us so far. The LF, we pay the LF money for certain services, and we have to go to them for things. I think maybe we don't have to, but they're generally much cheaper, which is good. So we are absolutely part of that. And when people pay their membership dues, they go into a fund which is owned by the LF, and it is a directed fund, i.e., we the CCC generally have discretion over how we spend it and how our budgets are done.
That was the part I was. Okay, that's the part I'm interested in, is that basically when you say reject the budget, is it based on a kind of accounting basis, or is it like, oh,
certainly on that? But if we decided to do something which was considered, against our charter or against the LF charter, I think that they would be within their rights to veto that. And if we were to do things which might be considered to put the LF in a bad light, or to say things about the LF, or cast into disrepute, ill repute, then again, I think that there's things they could do.
Okay.
So, Mike, is there anything that you know about in the law, in the bylaws and the rules and restrictions? So if we said, so just let me draw a contrast for a second. If we were, say, the Confidential Containers Foundation, and we were built, we were a community around the development and promotion of specifically the Cocoa project software, we could promote, we would spend our money to promote that software and things that are built on that software. We are, in contrast, the CCC is not about a specific piece of software. It's about a technology category.
Yeah, and it's not even a technology category we've ever been able to define, and we've actually been very careful not to try to define it for a variety of reasons as well. But yes.
Going back to Yulia's point, which is, if we decided that the best tactical way to grow awareness and grow usage of our technology category is through the promotion of commercial products that use it, do you think does that violate the rules or the spirit of the Linux Foundation in
I
some
think,
way.
yeah, I think it. There's a couple of things there. Firstly, I think that it is not the way that things have happened so far. So if you go, for instance, the CNCF, right, which is a Linux Foundation project, right, like us, but much bigger, they organize KubeCon, and they have exhibitors there at KubeCon who sponsor it, and they present their wares and they present their products. Absolutely. I think so. That's one thing. But I think that firstly, this hasn't. No one else has or does have as much of a disconnect between a technology, which is generally the software, and stuff they're putting out. And so when we, if a company were to say, we are, in your example, we've used Cocoa to do this amazing thing. It's more difficult to say we've allowed confidential computing to do this amazing thing, because we're not promoting, the open source software. And so there's no, I don't think there's any sort of memory of how to do this. Nobody knows what this looks like, and we're pushing closer to a line that people are unhappy about than people have done before. And I think the line always has to be, from what I'm hearing, that the work of the CCC, and preferably open source projects to do with this from the CCC, always needs to come first. So we've done this thing with Grameen or with Verizon, and here it is. So I don't know where the line lies, but I know that I'm getting pushback from the LF on it personally.
Around around our commercial promotions?
Around specifically the requests from Super Protocol, because they've pushed it further than other folks have a bit. Okay. That's not to fault Super. No, I don't. That's it's just what it is. And it's slightly complicated by the fact that I'm advisor for Super Protocol, but I've been very careful to separate out what's going on there, and I think that's okay. But I just need to be a bit careful there as well. So,
okay.
But I think generally it's raised. Yeah, sorry, I'll finish this and then absolutely. Yeah, it's raised the question of whether the sort of things we've been doing for other people as well, not just Super, is in line with how the LF likes to run things.
Okay.
Sorry.
Good. And this is my concern with our relationship with the LF. I will not call it hosting, but the relationship of the CCC to the LF. Okay, Ab, go ahead.
Yeah, so that's that, and thanks actually both for raising that, and thanks Mike Purcell for explaining. I think one thing that I feel that this is what's been a little bit over a year that I've been more active while I've been joining personally as AMD representative. I think it's also, I find that the promotion of CC is not as maybe as strong or as effective or from the members as it should be, especially larger corporations. Agreed. Right. So to me, it's almost like if you scroll up a little bit, Mike, on the document. No, sorry, that lower. Sorry, it was more on the furthermore. Sorry, I think the last one. If you see my comment here, was it And no,
You going? Oh,
table.
that's the end.
No, before that, sorry, the 80-20. There you go. Okay, so you say basically, to me, it's in my opinion, it's the company members need to be, and I include obviously my company in that statement, is we need to support, especially larger companies, to promote CC. That's the point, like to be more proactive. I think that's, in my opinion, that's not as hasn't been as strong as it should have been, in my opinion. So CCC can only do so much, or is as or the amplification of the messaging from CCC will be as strong as the members are amplifying themselves as well in coordination with the CCC outreach committee. What I mean by that, if, for example, that's why I said it's, for me, it's not conflicting in the sense that if you look at it like from CCC promoting the company X doing, no, maybe not, no, there's an X, but XYZ, using CCC, using CC, it should be actually kind of together, right? It's like basically company XYZ, CCC, there's a use case highlighting the importance of CC and so on and so forth. And that kind of like showcasing that and amplifying those success stories, right? So one of my kind of things that I hope will improve is getting more um, I would say company members to be more I don't know if proactive is the right word, but definitely a little bit more aggressive. Engaged maybe is a better word. So for me, I look at it, it's almost the other way around. So I think it's a more of a company members challenge more than a CCC challenge. Because as I said, CCC will be as strong as a message will be as strong as the members want it to be or engaged into it. So anyway, that's.
So, and here's some of the tension from the way I see it. The big companies don't need the CCC in some ways, because they can put stuff out and they can make a noise anyway. But it's a useful place to be parking some open source projects, spending some time there, and maybe doing some general work on technical stuff. They don't really need it in terms of outreach, particularly. And more specifically, the sorts of things that they get value from are not the sort of things that most of our startups get value from. And so the people who tend to be most engaged are the smaller companies who have the least resources and scale least, and need the economies of scale that the CCC can bring to the table and the LF can bring to the table. And at the same time, they see that the bigger companies are not doing as much as they might do because they just put stuff out and they never bother. Maybe if Google and Microsoft and Meta and whoever it may be, the premier companies, were posting more stuff to the CCC feed, this issue might have come up earlier. The one that we're talking about, because maybe people would have said, well, are you not doing too much on on promotion for yourselves here, for instance? But they don't, and they don't get involved with events coordination as much as they might. Mike, FJ, you are acting chair, and you've been we've had IBM as a chair and folks of the outreach. So there are absolutely exceptions, but I would love to find a way to get the big folks involved in ways that benefit everybody, and I don't know how to do that.
I would say
add also.
Sorry, just no worries. No, I think I would add one thing that even larger companies, I think will get value from the CCC is the adoption is still not completely broad, right? As broad as I think all of us want it to be, purely even from a quote unquote selfish, commercial, perspective. But honestly, I think most, if not all the companies believe in the benefit as well of the technology, but also there's obviously commercial interest. But what the CCC shows or when an industry body like a CCC, right, is to say, okay, this is an ecosystem play because we are only as strong as all the contributing elements of the value chain is. So there is a value for it to say, okay, oh, this is an AMD solution, or this is a Microsoft solution, or it's like that fragment, like having an ecosystem. This is basically, hey guys in the world, hey world, adopt confidential computing because this is really critical, especially for example in the context of AI. Choose the solution that works for you. That's fine, whatever it might be, whether on the hardware side, on the software side, or the cloud provider. But please, like it is critical. I think that's where the value comes from. This is that it's not it's a one company call that trying to play some games. It's really an industry, including competitors, right? Coming together and saying this is so important that we are putting aside, quote unquote, for a moment our competitive, like the competition between us, because this is more important than just our
and that's what we
commercial
should
interest.
be doing. I 100% agree.
Yeah. So there is, and that's the value that the CCC brings, even for larger companies. That basically it gives an umbrella of credibility that this is critical. So maybe not from a pure marketing visibility of the solution itself from a commercial perspective, but from the adoption to say, okay, hey, financial sector, it's important for you to adopt this. Government, you need really critical for you to adopt confidential computing. That's not like, hey, AMD, Microsoft, Google, or Intel saying this. No, this is like as an industry, we came together, and that credibility comes from the CCC.
And that's what I try and do when I'm speaking at conferences, when I'm speaking to partners, when I'm speaking to other folks. That's how I try and present it. Yes, but we need that from everybody.
Yeah.
Okay. So hey, I do want to maybe call on Keith, who has been our quietest member so far, just to see if you wanted to, through this discussion, you've formulated any thoughts on where we are so far.
I have a lens I came here with. I think it's important that I sit and listen to the lens of others to understand the full ecosystem challenge. I came to this from a small company perspective, working with large companies, the likes of the AWSs who sell the compute power in order for people to use confidential computing. From a small company developing a technology around confidential computing, the first hurdle that we have is selling confidential computing. To get customers to understand what it is and why they should adopt it. My goal would eventually be to get rid of that challenge and get rid of that hurdle, because I want my hurdles to be based upon my product and the feature, functionality, and value that it offers, not necessarily the underlying technology. So I come to this in trying to solve some of that challenge in removing my need to do the upsell of a core technology first in order to get to the value of the products that we're creating. But listening to everybody here, I'm now feeding that lens and understanding the bigger scope of what that challenge is. So, if I take a look at this from my perspective and selling it, I think of the top integration challenges. First is awareness of the technology. The second thing becomes the performance. My customers will ask me, how does this affect my performance if I want to take an application it's already containerized and putting it into a confidential computing or COCO environment? And the other one is disruption. So if I can help answer those quickly, or those are answered quickly for my customers, I can get right to the meat of the things that are being sold within this ecosystem. So that's how I'm looking at it.
Okay.
And one of the things I don't think we've done a good job of, and you've done a great job just right now, is saying what problems do we need solved that would help people adopt confidential computing. One of them is attestation. I've tried talking to people about that a lot. Another is we've tried to work on, use cases, getting some use cases out there by collecting them and publishing them. And that's gone a bit quiet. And Mike FJ did huge amounts of work to try and make that happen. And found it hard work, I think, right, Mike FJ?
Oh, use cases? Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, and it seems obvious, right? It seems like the obvious thing that everyone would want to do, but we are a set of volunteers, and the people with the most to gain have the least time to give, and the people with the most time to give and are the big folks, and they say, oh, we have other jobs as well, and we kind of fall between those two stools.
Yeah.
So Keith, thank you for that. I agree. What can we do to say this is this is how you fix it, this is how you make it easier?
So let me take a stab at trying to draw a conclusion from the conversation so far, is that the purpose of the whole endeavor is to grow awareness and adoption of confidential computing technology. There is a question of what is the best means to achieve that, but that's the objective, right? Is to, we are not here to promote a specific open source software project. We are not here to promote a specific commercial product. We are here to grow awareness and adoption of this technology category. That is my assertion. And this may seem like thank you, Captain Obvious, but I think if we conclude that, if we say to the governing board or whoever says, this is why we exist, I mean this is why the organization exists, and this is the specific mission of the outreach committee, then what flows after that is what is the strategy to do that. Now, there's a question about, Yulia, I see your hand up. There's a question about, and Mike, you bring this up often, what is its goal regarding the membership of the organization? Does outreach have a mission to grow the organization or perpetuate its membership? Is a question. Let me put a pin in that and hit Yulia's comment here.
Yeah, yes, my key disconnect is I do believe that among us who are here and maybe even like outside of the discussions about awareness, everyone is on the same page. But when I look at the CCC mission in those things that Mike has described, there is like a clear understanding and that the budget from the CC memberships needs to be spent in order to support specifically open source projects and nothing else. I am just like thinking that even support of offline events is some kind of like magic and packaging, how it is helping these open source projects to succeed. But that's all that CCC mission is focused on. So to me, when I read this kind of document, to me now there is a disconnect in there's like what we want, the acceleration of CC and open collaboration, and this is all we all are focusing on. But in the documents it states to support open source projects, and it is a full disconnect between the reality.
Well, it should be partly that, but I don't think it's ever suggested that's the only thing it's for. But typically that's how the LF has done it. I'm not saying it's appropriate for us, and that's always been a bit of an issue right from the beginning when we formed this 6 years ago. And the other thing is that we shouldn't think that outreach is the only way to promote, because, for instance, there's a lot of work going in the technical SIGs, which is around things like coming up with standards or improving protocols, which is another way to ease adoption for certain types of folks. It really is. It may not fit what we're doing, for particularly startups, but if it's going to allow people to know that they can use AI, GPUs alongside CPUs more easily, then that's certainly going to help adoption generally. I know it doesn't fit everyone's adoption fitting, but so there's a whole bunch of technical stuff that we do, which absolutely does serve to promote confidential computing. But it's only one type of promotion.
I think one thing that kind of trying to reconciling that position is what represents the responsibilities and the explicit responsibilities and the priorities of the outreach committee in that context. So
yeah.
The CCC may have objectives to bring in and promote and cultivate specific open source projects. Like let's take something like Manatee or Grameen,
yeah.
And the TAC and everyone else may provide energy. I don't know what exactly they do, but they would do that. It may not, we may, as outreach, may decide that it is not in the best interest or the highest priority of outreach, given our mission of grow awareness and adoption of confidential computing technology, to promote Manatee or Grameen. We're like, okay, that is not our priority. We're going to focus on other things. Okay. Ab, I saw your note that you got to go in a few minutes. So this got me thinking a lot about, so if we say that that's the mission, the mountain that we are going to climb is growing awareness and adoption of confidential computing technology, after that is like, how are we going to do that? What is the best way to achieve that goal? And this uncorks that commercial versus commercial forward or solution forward or product forward approach versus a technology forward approach. Let me put forward another thesis and we can debate. The thesis is people do not go shopping for confidential computing. They go shopping for, I need better security. I need to lock down this particular workload. I need to be able to, I need to create a retail analytics program that is compliant and does not become a horrible privacy liability for my customers. Those are the things that I go shopping for, and I go in and looking for solutions to those particular problems. The purveyors of those solutions are the commercial entities that are members of the CCC. So perhaps the best path to growing awareness and adoption of confidential computing is to promote the capabilities and solutions of our member companies. And so this is a reversal of our, the current 80-20 rule is you're 80% technology, 20% commercial implementation in our approach. If you're coming in under the
where's
CCC
that 80-20 come from, by the way? Because
Me.
the first I heard of it, I think, was you. Okay, that's
Yeah.
fine. As long as we know that, that's fine. Okay.
That's how I articulate the primacy of technology forward messaging versus commercial messaging, which is the approach would be you come in, your approach, if you're working under the CCC banner in a CCC funded activity, you come in with like, confidential computing is my opening bid, and then I'm going to show you, this is why confidential computing is amazing, and then here is a way that we use it in our product. What I am proposing, perhaps, is that we should look at reversing that and saying, do you have this problem? Do you suffer from the heartbreak of, privacy concerns, compliance concerns, security concerns? Then Super Protocol or any of the other member companies that offer solutions may have a solution to that problem. It uses confidential computing, which is this amazing thing. And so it's somewhat of a reversal of the approach, which is, instead of coming in technology first, then moving into implementation as an example, it's like, I'm going in with a solution to the problem, and I'm going to say at its core, this uses this technology that we are all promoting. Mike.
Yeah, so I'll come to that particular point in a minute. I was just reflecting on what you're saying, and I think what we've tried to do, and maybe not explicitly, and maybe this is part of the problem, is say confidential computing solves a whole bunch of problems, and we want to give it the credibility so that when someone proposes a solution which uses it, the people proposing that solution, whether it's Super or AMD or Intel or Oracle or whoever it may be, can go and say, look, it's not just us, here's the stuff, and we are part of this ecosystem, which is a real thing, and here is the information you need to do that. And I think in some ways that's a bit weak and hasn't necessarily worked very well, but I think that's what we've tried to do. So that's a historical rather than a suggestion. To your further point, I think the approach that you suggested might be too much for the LF to bite off and chew.
I hear you. And that I think there are a couple of risks in that approach. Risk number one is the LF doesn't like it. Risk number two is you have either, large, well-funded big companies, a Google, for example, or you have, highly energetic companies that, throw a lot of energy into these CCC channels and wind up becoming, dominant voices in our messaging, simply because they're the ones that show up to do the work. And so you're going to have to create,
which is kind of fine.
Yeah, I would say
it'll be fine until it's not fine. Sorry, Ab, go ahead.
No. To me, I don't think there's an issue. Whoever shows up, they have every right to use the stage. I think before I leave you on that, and I apologize, I have a conflict. I really want to see also one element in all of the strategy, how to, I hate this word, but I'll use it, crack the whip on the premier members altogether to step up a little bit and also do their part. I think that part is missing, and that will have a major impact.
100%.
So I leave you on that, and that includes AMD, but I think we're trying to do better. But I think that's case in point. Hey, Mike is here from Intel. We're AMD. We're pushing but other premier member. We need to crack the whip a little bit.
You're absolutely right. Yeah. Absolutely right.
Right. Okay. Apologies. I have to drop.
Thanks, Ab.
But thanks.
Okay.
Just
All
from
right.
what Abe said is like there is membership, but there is always what you are willing to do and what you are willing to get, right? So in order for Premier, it's not like if you are a member, you need to do this. You can impose that, right? But but maybe there is like the question why they are not doing this, right? So we tried to do something. We're not big, right? So we were trying to do something, but we've got the pushback, not what I have expected. So for 80 to 20%, this kind of split, I've heard once I got the pushback. I have not, like, I was bad in homework. I didn't know this kind of, the challenges that there were. But the real issue is that we want to contribute, we want to give something back, right? And this is the same for big tech, right? They want to contribute, they want to give something back. The question is why they are not using this opportunity, whether the community is not big enough, whether the community is not influential enough, whether whatever it is, right? So, but there is a reason for that, because when I don't know, US government will say, let's do this, all big tech you will not need to convince them to show up, right, and to do something. I'm just, this kind of parallel maybe not the best, but I'm just trying to understand what, it's not just about that the members are doing something smaller than they should be, it's also the balance, right? What needs to be balanced so that they are willing to do as much as possible that they are not doing now, right?
Yep. I come back again to say that I think in the minds of some of the big tech folks, they are getting benefit already because they're getting benefit from the technical stuff. I think they could be getting a lot more benefit, and they could be benefiting the ecosystem more by doing more outreach stuff. And I've been pushing them for a long time to get more involved. And thank you, Intel, and thank you, AMD, for turning up to this. Yeah, so I'm not disagreeing.
By the way,
Julia.
I do want to be fair to NVIDIA, because like Laura, Laura Martinez
Oh yes,
is also
no, there are a number of folks who absolutely do step up.
a whipper.
And Laura's a very good
So-
example. And they put speakers up for things as well. So we should be fair to our members, and allow them to do good stuff. But I think it's about, we need something coordinated, and we need something coordinated which the big folks can get and will get behind as well, which benefits the small folks and the big folks and the ecosystem as a whole. And that's possibly part of the challenge, to find that poster child which everyone can see benefits everyone.
Yeah. I don't want to go all, I could easily go all navel gazing on going back to the foundation of what did the big companies get at the foundation of the CCC versus what they get from it now is a different, I think those are different. And I also don't think it particularly serves our purpose here. Jamie, you have been quiet for a while. I don't know if that is deep thought or
Aura.
I may have been eating lunch while we spoke, but
okay.
I was listening.
Fair enough.
I don't think I have anything to add right now.
Okay.
Remind me who
right.
you're with, Jamie. I'm sorry.
Invari, which is the
I know Invari, of course. Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. All right. So here's where I think I am. Here's where I think I have arrived. I think we're in general agreement that that awareness and adoption are the macro goals. I think we've got some degree of consensus that promotion of the commercial products is necessary to help drive awareness and adoption, because it is through the commercial products that people are able to realize the benefits of confidential computing. It is not the technology, it is not the promotion of the technology in and of itself that makes people adopt it. We could maybe grow awareness by saying, hey, look at attested, trusted execution environments, but we won't necessarily grow adoption. If you want to grow adoption, you've got to make the technology solve real problems and deliver real value for customers. But I think we also have to resolve that tension between kind of LF ideals of Kumbaya open source versus the filthy reality of capitalism in our day and age. So we've got I say this for effect. I see I got a raised eyebrow out of Jamie on that one. So we need to be able to resolve that tension. Personally, I'm inclined to push against the LF on this one. I'd say, if you have a problem with our marketing tactics in growing, I would say, I would like to hear from you about what specific changes that you would like me to make, rather than me going and asking them permission of, can I do these things? And I'm going to rather say, I'm going to do these things. I'm going to let you stop me.
I would go halfway and say, this is what we think we're for. This is how we think we can do it, and here are the boundaries that we plan to put in place for ourselves. Tell us we're wrong.
So both mics, this kind of like, is there a way that you can use Super as an example? Because literally we were those who started to adopt CC using CCC hosted projects. This is the reason why Linux Foundation supports open source project, even if they are low level, right? So this is the reason why the funds are invested to and supported, and even big tech supports with the resources, whatever. So this is the reason, to ensure that the technology could be used, and we were using it. How we eventually end up, where we migrated, evolved, etc., it does not matter, but we were using this technology, and now we are not, but we were in the beginning. Does it
I think writing a blog post about that would be a really interesting thing for the CCC and for Super Protocol.
Yeah, that was I understood yesterday when I realized this kind of gap between yes, the reality.
And in the specific example, Yulia, I think what the current stance and the current approach of CCC outreach is that it's technology, it's CCC, it's confidential computing forward. Commercial implementation follows behind that. In the specific instance that we were talking about, like some of the blog posts and other promotions that you were talking about for Super Protocol, it was Super Protocol solution, commercial solution first.
Oh, forget about it. It's not
a confidential computing. So that's why it was in contrast with the existing thing. And what we're saying, I think one of the things that we're exploring is, should that have been rejected? It's like because maybe it shouldn't have been, because reversing the approach might actually be more effective. So that's where
Mike is actually pushing for maybe something that wouldn't have got the reaction that we got. See what I mean?
Yeah, I fully understand, and I'm fully with you, right? But I'm also hearing Mike's like concerns about Linux Foundation, right? And whatever we want, if there is a need to find a balance, we need to find some arguments. And to me, adding these arguments that not the like commercial. We will be open source, but we're not yet, right? But for a Linux Foundation, we are not open source project 100% for the moment until we're done, right? So it means that now we are not within the limits that are supported by Linux Foundation. And what I'm claiming is that, look,
No,
we actually are.
So you don't need to be having an open source project or any of your code open source to be a member of the Linux of the Confidential Computing Consortium, and that's something that we said right from the beginning. So yes, we're about promoting open source and adoption of but promoting open source and the adoption of confidential computing. You do not have to have an open source project to be a member of the CCC.
Yes, but why do you support open source project on the first base? Why do you do that? What's the point in those projects?
Because we're part of the Linux Foundation.
Yeah, I'm going to call timeout on this one because I think we've
gone as far as we can.
Let's hit that. In, I think in a following conversation. We got like 13 minutes left. I wanted to toss this one out for people to kick around real quick. Is demand side versus supply side. Do we want to? What do we think is the wisdom and the effectiveness of focusing on either or balancing those two things? And when I say demand side, I think about the ultimate adopters of solutions based on confidential computing. And this is likely to be, financial institutions, healthcare institutions, governments, commercial entities, Nike, Coca-Cola, General Motors, that could be buying these technologies based on confidential computing and driving building awareness and driving demand in those audiences. Versus supply side, which is, do we want to be reaching out to software developers and showing them how to implement confidential computing in their solutions that they're building? So it's like, oh, if you want to enhance the technology or the security, privacy, confidentiality of your solution for whatever your market you're working on, using confidential computing could be a big help. Do you guys have thoughts about where we would want to strike the balance between kind of demand side versus supply side? End user versus developer.
I like to me, developers come first. Like we're here developers, right? So at least three of us, right? So developers comes first, because when you go to end customer, they don't want to have a learning experience of what confidential computing is. They want to know what specific problem could be solved with confidential computing, and you need to have a solution for that. And this solution may be built internally, in-house, or externally with ISVs. And if you go with internally, it means that the whole IT department or specific innovation department needs to learn what is confidential computing, what is attestation, how it works, how it will be integrated and works within, how it will be supported, and a lot of other stuff. So the long term of the deployment within in-house of any end customer of confidential computing, right? That would really be a very long and especially closed story. While you go with the ISVs, with the developers that are trying to solve the end customer needs, you will have the solution that are meeting the requirements for using of confidential computing, and you will have the community that will promote this technology applied specifically solution for the end customers, right? And so yeah, this kind of like, if we choose between those, for me, developers from the awareness perspective come first, because they will try to solve the end customer's exact problem, and they will try to use confidential computing to solve specific end customer problems in all those verticals.
Yulia, what percentage of our, let's say, our budget do you think we should spend end user versus developer? What would be the split?
I don't know, you can have it 40 to 20, for example, for developers versus and customers, because there is always the mix of, it's not like sharp, right? So there would be the same messages will go to everyone because it's awareness. You start with the pain points of the end customers that could be solved using ISV solutions, right? So you will always cover within this kind of audience, you will still cover the messages you would like to talk about for the end customers.
Okay. Jamie, I saw you had written some on this question earlier.
Yeah, my understanding may be a little flawed. I'm a big fan of the technical conversations, but when the conversation goes to developing or to fostering developers and their understanding, it feels like workforce development. And I don't mean to underplay its value, but it's a very long play. And I know from my experience when there's money to solve a problem, then like within a larger organization, the problem of how to get people trained up to solve it internally comes next, doesn't come first. So I think I index in the other direction from Yulia, but again, that may be inexperience. So I don't mean for my voice to be the same amplitude as hers.
Jamie,
So
we have
I think
also have other solutions in mind when we talk about that, and it may really Supers with automation and removing all this confidential computing complexity may specifically put me in some vacuum of what the other reality for other solutions is. Sorry, Mike.
No
no, that's
worries.
fine. Actually, I think you've covered it probably.
Keith, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, no, Keith, please.
I think the developer side removes the complexity of the technology. That's why it's really important to have a developer focus. But I see this, I come from this product management, sales side of things. That's where my brain is wired for my long career, even though I do strategy and business BD today. So I think there's a balance between the two. I think greenfield and the brownfield, right? Greenfield is taking care of the complexity. The brownfield are how easily can I adopt this technology with minimal disruption. So I'm thinking that more of a balanced perspective.
Okay. Yeah, I go back and forth on this one, but I tend, and maybe this is a byproduct of Intel's position in the confidential computing stack, which is, I favor targeting end users. That if you don't have end users asking for and demanding and seeking solutions, all the developers in the world aren't going to help you, if there's no demand. So I tend to favor, I tend to say if we were going to prioritize, I would prioritize end users. But I also know that if you don't have the solutions, all the demand in the world won't help you. So you've got to have Mike.
Yeah, so I'm going to assert something as a proposition, which is that the Confidential Computing Consortium has failed in its initial intent, because the hope, possibly naive, was that having some strong open source solutions would allow easy uptake, and getting a few projects that became mature fairly quickly would allow developers very easily to adopt. And when we talk about developer-led, for the LF, that means pointing developers at open source projects and saying, look, you can do this stuff with this sort of thing, right? And we are, with possible exception, I think I would say, of Verizon, maybe Keystone, a long way away from that for confidential computing, partly because the hardware hasn't settled down and has changed quite significantly over the last 6 years. And partly because the open source projects that we've adopted have not flourished in the way we might like, for whatever reason. And so from the LF's approach of, here is a solution that you can use, go out and build stuff with it, we failed. And I think the sort of solution that maybe Yulia and Jamie and maybe Keith are thinking of, it's a very different type of solution, and say, here's a fit for your use case, and you're now in a position to build what you want, which is rather different to, here is a thing which we, the open source community, have built, and it's brilliant, and now everyone should build a community around it. And so the assertion that we failed is a bit harsh, but in terms of the way that most, maybe not most, a fair number of the well-known LF projects work, we're not doing the same thing. And that's because it's a different market and a different set of technologies, and it's basically hardware based, right? This is not software that we're selling. We're selling hardware. And that's very different to what most people are doing. So I think how we think about what we're pushing probably needs to be informed by that.
Okay.
I don't have an answer.
All right. No, good. So with the 2.5 minutes to go, here is what I would propose. Again, my goal is to do this in 2 meetings. So what I would like to do is maybe write down, try to synthesize what we've talked about so far today, and try and balance out the various viewpoints, and write down a plan, a set of objectives, an objectives, a strategy, a set of, we didn't really talk about the metrics much, but I can discern a lot of thoughts from folks writing so far, and put that up as a straw man for our next meeting. And then let's focus on that and say, yeah, we agree with this. This is wrong. Mike, you're on drugs. Kind of working our way through the document as a way to focus things, and with the goal of ultimately we're going to have to put something in front of the governing board, the outreach membership first, and then the governing board, to say, this is the new plan, this is the strategy, and all of our tactical and budget decisions will be in service of this strategy. But maybe I can take a first stab at writing that down, and then let's critique in the next go round. Then, if we say, with these changes, it's good enough, we can proceed with presenting it to the larger outreach committee, or we'll see if we need a third meeting.
That sounds good.
Okay.
I will try and put some words into the doc tomorrow. I'm sorry I didn't do it. I did put some comments, but I didn't do some text, and I'll try and do that tomorrow.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, I'll see if I can get this together. I'll put out a message today for when the probably about 10 business days out is when we will try and do this again. Okay.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you very much indeed, everyone.
Mike,
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate the
Bye.
participation.
closing
Bye.
comment, Mike.
All right.
Mike.
Take care.
Mike,
Yeah.
one closing comment. I'm looking at this from what was the original mission statement from the LF on why the CCC was created, and that was to bring together hardware vendors, cloud vendors, cloud providers, developers, open source experts, and academics to accelerate the confidential computing market. There's nothing in there about the users themselves and who will be adopting it. And I think that's the piece. While I don't necessarily agree the CCC failed in its mission, I do agree that that piece has not been focused on. Those use cases for customer adoption, critically important for adoption.
Yeah, and I do think that perhaps this is a longer conversation than I have time for, but I think that there is conditions have changed, from the foundation, or the founding of the CCC versus where we are today. And I would bet that if they had to remission if anybody thought about it hard enough to remission the CCC at where we are today, they would phrase it differently than what that was originally chartered as. I think it would actually be more aligned to awareness and adoption. And I think just knowing what I know about Intel's thinking and some of the other members thinking. All right, I got to run for my next CCC meeting. So thank you guys all for playing along. This is great. Thanks.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.